Monomania.
Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Deerhunter LP, Monomania. Deerhunter is a Georgia-based rock band. This is their full-length release, and they've pretty much been one of the bigger names in indie rock for the past 5 or so years. And their style tends to lean toward the more psychedelic side of things, noise pop, dream pop, as well as a little bit of shoegaze. The band's earlier releases were very much sonic explorations through rock music, whereas on their later releases they would flex their pop sensibilities through the songwriting of Lockett Punt and Bradford Cox with albums like Microcastle, as well as the very well-produced and instrumentally lavish Halcyon Digest. With the direction that the band was going in, you would think that they were just one album away from making some kind of big indie crossover into the mainstream, where you have this underground band and slowly over time they gain more pop appeal, and then they sort of, get that sliver of limelight from more general music listeners. Given the material that was on Halcyon Digest, the last album they came out with, and how high that album charted on the Billboard charts, I thought that Deerhunter would be capable of making an album that had a lot of pop appeal, even more pop appeal, but still maintain their personality. But Deerhunter is nothing if not full of surprises, and it seems that the band has completely turned around on this new album and have gone back to their noisier roots. On this album, Deerhunter dishes out a lot of rock tunes with a strong garage rock attitude, and tracks that are really sort of straightforward and just get right to the point. Not so much the more psychedelic and spaced out jams that were inhabiting an album like Cryptograms. So it's not like Monomania is a return to form or anything. In a way, Monomania is most definitely progression. You could say that over time, Deerhunter has been working to kind of eliminate from their musical formula, and Monomania in its own sort of way does that by getting rid of very lavish, detailed, layered psychedelic production in favor of a recording that sounds more like it was recorded very shoddily in a bedroom. If anything, a lot of songs on this album kind of feel like some of the more straightforward material to come out of Bradford Cox's solo project Atlas Sound, but in this instance way more lively instrumentally and a little punchier. In a way, this new album actually kind of has the guts that I wish Bradford Cox's last full-length LP did. The very rough aesthetic that Deerhunter goes for on this LP definitely makes a lot of these songs stick out. Bradford Cox's vocals are mixed very high, smothering almost all of the instrumentation underneath his voice. The guitars are pretty distorted, and when they're not distorted, they're just very clear, sharp, and upfront. The drums are very dirty, gritty. The more subtle tracks on this LP come off very catchy and clear as well, but newer fans to Deerhunter who are really huge into albums like Microcastle as well as Halcyon Digest may see songs like this as possibly being just a little overly simple. For sure, the direction that Deerhunter goes in on this LP does have appeal. It's helped the careers of many garage rockers over the years, neo-garage rockers like Jay Retard as well as Ty Segall. But what's really going to make this album stick with people is whether or not the songs are memorable, if they're catchy, if they're passionate. The band starts this LP pretty eccentric with the song Neon Junkyard, which is this tune that features a pretty captivating vocal melody, sharp guitar leads. Bradford Cox on certain parts of the song makes these really weird mouth noises that echo out into oblivion, just kind of adding a psychedelic characteristic to this song. The song has a pretty basic structure, but that doesn't necessarily ruin it because the melodies are so sharp. What sort of ends up being a downside to the tune is that at the very end, when it seems like the band gets kind of tired of building the song one piece after another, they just sort of embark upon this very static, underwhelming, noisy jam until the song just sort of peters out. This is something Deerhunter does on quite a few tracks from this LP actually, and sometimes it just feels sort of boring, and other times, like for example the song Monomania, the title track on this LP, it comes off as really intense, thrilling, and chaotic. If there was any question that Deerhunter was going in a garage rock direction with this album, the song Leather Jacket clears that up with some really jagged wailing guitars, just an attitude-filled riff. I just cannot stress how much attitude just plays a freaking role on this album, to the point where it really sort of overshadows the song sometimes, or makes a really lackluster song seem a little more interesting than it really is. The track The Missing is maybe the first song on this album that people will acknowledge as being sort of a traditional Deerhunter song. It's more toned down, more subtle, the instrumentation rings through clearly, not much distortion on this thing. Bradford Cox sings a really sweet vocal melody, and the emotion behind his voice comes off as very charismatic yet sort of emotionally disconnected. Cool. I like the really warm synthesizers that come in after the verses on this track too. It adds a really nice touch. I think people will find a lot of appeal in this song who are longtime Deerhunter fans, as well as the track Dream Captain, where Bradford Cox has some pretty quaint lyrics on the track that are really sort of cute. And the song Sleepwalking too is a quieter number on this LP that comes off pretty charming through its subtleties. Even if you don't necessarily love what Deerhunter did on this new album, I think that some of the quieter moments on this LP are worth salvaging and just sort of, you know, taking into consideration in terms of ideas for when Deerhunter does another full length. There are some moments on this album though where the simplicity doesn't necessarily work in Deerhunter's favor, like the song Blue Agent, which I feel like in terms of a tune is a fine track, but as the band is performing this song without introducing new ideas as it goes along, the track just feels really tedious. And the song THM as well. And there are some instances on this album where some tracks don't even feel like that. Like the song Pensacola just sounds like really bad alternative country. It's actually like the band is trying to do an alternative country parody with these really hokey guitar leads and very generic guitar chords. And the way Bradford Cox is singing on this song in this really campy way, it seems like he's really kind of yucking it up on what might be a joke. And honestly, Night Bike toward the end of this LP is another sort of least favorite of mine, where Bradford Cox seems to be very indulgently strumming and singing in this very directionless way that does not feel entertaining at all. It's at this point on the album where it feels like the attitude that toward the beginning of the LP that felt very refreshing and kind of badass and exciting is now getting really tiring, especially given how many tracks on this LP felt more like posturing than, you know, just a good solid song. While in theory I would have been interested in an album where Deerhunter went in a noisier garage rock direction, I mean that's what I assumed based on the title track that dropped before this album, which I still love. But when it comes to the practice of putting this album together, it seems like Deerhunter left out some essential details, some catchier songs, and really just some more raw energy. I'm feeling a light to decent 6 on this LP. If you've given it a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? And here's another opinion.
Hey, listen, Cal's gonna give it to you straight. I've listened to plenty of Deerhunter in my day, and the Man Mania racks. I've heard plenty of songs with guitar and drums, but none of them nice as this.
There you go. Deerhunter, Monomania, forever.